Hello, and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast. We have my friend Spencer Crandall here today.
Spencer.
This is very exciting. I'm a big fan of his music. I was just telling him I always get his song, If I Could Love the Wrong One. It's always stuck in my head randomly when I'm like brushing my teeth.
You
But
have
yeah,
an amazing voice.
Thank you
really,
so much. I
Really,
appreciate
really.
his new single, Honeymoon Phase, just came out. So check that out, guys, because it's pretty sick. What's that song about?
Just being in love. It's a good old love song, and I'm really lucky, and I've watched my parents have been together 39 years this fall.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking to my mom. She's like, "Yeah, it's just been one long honeymoon phase. We just love each other." I'm like, "Oh, that's sweet." So
Wow.
I just kind of wrote that, and need a good little feel good summer / roll your windows down love song country vibe. So that just came out yesterday. Super fun.
Very cool. Okay, so we normally we were explaining this a little bit to you, but normally we start off by like asking you what you were like as a child.
Yeah, let's just jump right
Let's
into
just
it.
dive right in.
You know, what's pretty interesting is that we've had a lot of different people so far in the show, very creative types from all different backgrounds. And almost all of them have had really good families. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Beautiful
really
thing.
interesting. It's like that seems to be almost like counterintuitive what you think, right? Because we hear so many
Yeah,
stories about
the
people.
tortured
Right.
artists.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That are like abused or neglected. and
Sure.
It's almost everybody to a T has been, no, I had great parents. They were
Well, I
really
think everyone
supportive.
can
That's
find. I think once you become an adult, you can find a way to also realize like that you're a lot more thankful for your parents than whatever, even if they make like mistakes or stuff. You know, I feel like everyone
Yeah.
that's a songwriter sees like great things. about
Yeah,
it,
I certainly feel that way. I'm super lucky. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and she's like, said something like, "Well, we didn't mess you up too bad." Or I'm like, no, like everyone has something. Everyone has a bone to pick with their parents or their partner or their whatever. But even if you get into the 90th percentile, you're actually in the 1 percentile. You're so lucky that,
Right.
if you had just have a couple things like, you wouldn't let me go to the movies or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
where I am. And
Yeah.
man, that's so lucky. Like
Yeah.
it's literally like hitting the lottery.
Mhm.
If you really think about it, to be parented and to be, especially for me, to be raised where I was with the education and the friends and the support systems. I mean, it's like hitting the lottery and then getting struck by lightning,
Yeah.
then getting bitten by a shark. Or
Yeah.
whatever. The odds are pretty
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling a story last night. We were in the hotel here in Nashville, and I go downstairs to get some wine for us. And there's this young group of guys, like in their 20s probably, all looked like, clean-cut guys and everything. But, definitely they were a little bit buzzed, and they start saying stuff to me, and at first I thought they were messing with me because I'm from New York, and kids from New York would probably do that.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, like, am I going to have to hit one of these guys? And they start saying stuff like, oh, we like your outfit and everything. And then they go to me, what are you doing here, sir? And I said, I'm here with my wife. And they're like, oh, wow, how long have you been married? Like, who thinks a young teenage 20-year-old guy?
That's really sweet.
And I was like, well, 36 years. And they go, whoa. And they were like, whoa, oh my God. And they're shaking my hand. And they're like, wow, in this day and age, that's really rare. And then we get to the bottom, and I'm about to walk out. And the lead guy said, yeah, my parents are divorced, and it really hurts my heart all the time. And I was like, wow. Like that somebody would say that. And I wonder if his
Yeah.
parents even know, you know what I mean? So it's interesting
Totally.
how, like you said, it is kind of lucky. And even these young guys were like kind of appreciative. Wow, you were married for so long. And
Yeah, I mean, I think
Kinda
if you
cool.
can say that in the 30s now, you're a bit of a unicorn, and that's a very special thing. I hope you're really proud of that. And that's
Yeah.
we
takes,
are.
I'm sure you know better than anybody, the work and the self-reflection, and
Yeah.
and we also live in a world as a guy who's on social media, and it's getting easier and easier on paper
Right.
to feel like that might not be worth it to people or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see
Mm-hmm.
as time goes on what marriage looks like and what the institution of marriage kind of holds up as, because
Right.
my parents were brought up as, look, you find someone and you get married, and they're 39 years in, and they don't really think about it. They're like, this is what I was told to do.
Right.
I think a lot of younger people are kind of putting that on the table and like, do I want this? The statistics are scary. So
Yep.
it'll be interesting.
I think it's also interesting because when you look at, some of the issues that we talk about, some of the mental health issues or struggles that people have, a lot of people have always thought about them only in psychological terms,
Mm.
like because of trauma or because of neglect, that's why you feel anxious or depressed or low self-esteem, or that someone who's raised in a great family with everything is never going to feel those things. Why would they feel those things? They don't have the reason to feel them, right? But that's where my approach is, no, it's neurological. It's not. It's not. Most of the time, it's not psychological. And in fact, in many of these things, as we've talked about, the more talented and even, the better background, because obviously if you're very talented yourself, those are usually built on family traits, which means people in your family are pretty talented. Your parents are probably pretty talented, and they've tend to be more successful. And so it's not, none of this is necessarily, or the things that we talk about. I mean, of course, there are psychological and abuse, and they have their own effect, and they affect the brain. But that you can come from a really great background and have all the support in the world.
Oh yeah.
And then that might make you feel even worse about feeling that way, because then you look around and you say, I have no excuse. Like, I have no reason. I mean, my parents gave me everything, and
the golden handcuffs, if you will.
Yeah. Sure. So going back to your childhood, right?
Yeah.
So just you as a kid. Did you have siblings? Where were you in the mix?
Yeah, so I'm the second of 4. I have an older brother, a younger brother, and a little sister. My sister's adopted from China. Yeah, middle child. I feel like an older child in a lot of ways. I love my siblings. I love my family. I feel, like I was saying earlier, I feel super lucky. We're from Colorado, so we're always outside and camping and spend a lot of quality time together. We're really close with my extended family.
And what are your parents like? What did they do?
Yeah, so my dad is just about to retire. He's been in home building for 40 years. I think he loved his job, but he loved what his job afforded him to do. And they were really intentional, like that they would make sure that work was something that they did, but it didn't run their lives. So I don't really picture my dad missing baseball games or like, oh, I gotta stay up late or whatever. He was pretty balanced, and I think it really rubbed off on us in a great way. That like when I think of life, I try to think of it in this really balanced way of like, yeah, I want to go see the concert, and I also want to work, and I can have both. And I think that was really healthy. My mom was an entrepreneur. She had several businesses. She worked from home for a while. She stayed at home for I think over 10 years, and then she went back to work at the church that we went to, and then now she's in the nonprofit space with a company called they just rebranded. They were MOPS, now they're Momco. But she does international like women's health and curriculum, and it's really cool. She was just in Scotland and Romania, and she speaks to women all around the world.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, she's a badass. She's great.
Either of them or anybody else in music in your family? Was that something that you did yourself, or do you feel like it came from anybody?
Yeah, I think if you were to go back further, like I love my parents, God bless them, not incredibly musical. My great-grandfather, so my mom's grandfather, was a savant musician.
Wow.
He played almost every instrument, like truly, brass, strings, and was playing in large orchestras in the first chair at like 14, 15, 16. And then went over to China to do like these massive orchestras for many, many years. And then was in charge of, there's this big hotel in Colorado Springs called the Broadmoor, and he was kind of the conductor and musical director there for decades, and people would come and see their shows and stuff. So he was always playing the piano, and then I think my mom and my aunts would yell at me. They would say, oh, we played the flute or whatever. So everybody was around music. Music was certainly really on that side of the family. On the other side of my family, my Uncle Randy was a country musician and gave it a crack in his life. And then my aunt's husband, Scott, has gotten to play the Ryman, and he was a country musician and came out here back in like the 80s, I think. So both sides love music, was really influenced by music. I think they both came from like poor backgrounds, and I think music a lot of times gives people so much hope and something to look forward to. And so if you can do that, you can throw parties for cheap and have everybody come over and enjoy something. So I think that was a huge part of their lives for sure.
Cool.
Wow, that's incredible. So is that's what made you get into country music, or?
I don't really know. Like there wasn't a time in my life without country music. My parents were just fanatical country fans. So I remember getting older and all of a sudden my friends were playing other music, and I'm like, what is that? You know what I mean?
Like garbage.
Yeah, And then my older brother, everything my parents and my older brother was like, cool, I'll do the opposite. So he crashed all of our computers with like Napster and LimeWire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like downloading hundreds of albums of like Skrillex and these things. And he's
Lil
like,
Wayne on LimeWire.
yeah, exactly. Mom and dad are going to show you Garth Brooks, but I'm going to show you Lil Wayne. And I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa. Could talk about drugs.
My
and
older brother
guns
did the
and-
same thing.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden you kind of start that LimeWire generation where I'm going, man, I love the stories and the instruments of country music. Like a steel guitar makes me like, oh, I love that. But I love the phrasing of like Ed Sheeran, and I love the rappy cadences, and I love the candy of pop music, that melodic sense. So a long time ago, I stopped trying to define it much more than just saying, yeah, I do country music, and if it's not for you, that's totally fine. But I just use all the influences and kind of, I guess, transcend and include whatever I can include that I love. Great. If I don't love it, just let it go.
Yeah. What was like the first like pulling of your heartstrings that made you want to write lyrics down? Like, what do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember being a kid, and there's a song called Don't Take the Girl by Tim McGraw. And I remember being, whatever, 5, 6, 7, and I would be like crying. And I just felt it so deeply. And I'd be like, play it again. My parents were like, please, no. So when I thought of writing lyrics, I wanted to make people feel that, and I wanted to make them see the movie. That was the way I could describe it, because country music, I think the biggest way to describe country music versus most other music is one is the soundtrack to the movie and the other is the script. So pop music is like, tonight, having fun tonight. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. And you can watch what's happening on screen, and that's in the background. It makes you feel something, but not the thing.
Yeah.
Country music is, he pulled up in the red Chevy. He got out. He rang the doorbell. There was a tear in her eye. Like, I love the detail. And so I wanted to make movies that were 3 minutes long with melodies.
Wow.
And that's why country music, still to this day, like, trust me, I thought, am I supposed to be like in a boy band or something or whatever? But at the end of the day, country music brings me back because I'm obsessed with the movie. That's like the song, The Right One, that you were singing earlier. In that right, I pushed really hard to have the beginning part be the movie versus just a feeling.
Yeah.
So I remember being that right. And they're like, let's just talk about how much that hurts. I'm like, instead of, one of the best pieces of advice I got early on was, don't tell people how you feel, tell them what's going on. And then that will make them feel. So like the opening line is, the U-Haul just left, guess that's just me. Versus, man, I'm really sad tonight. Right? So the movie versus the feeling. And that's what keeps me coming back to country music. It just, I want to see the movie. I want to make people feel with my own experiences. And I think the more specific we get, weirdly, the more universal it becomes. And that's country music. That's the free drugs that I get to play around with every day.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we were talking about beforehand about how, you know, my favorite songs are sad songs. I've said that before. You said the same thing. And how even when I'm working out, like if I'm going for a long run, I play a whole series of sad songs.
Totally.
So
And I'll be
crazy.
crying. I'll be crying as I'm running. You know what I mean? And I remember my wife and everybody be like, how do you play sad songs when you're trying to be run and motivated? And it should be more like what you're talking about. And then you said the same thing. You know, when you're working out, you're like crying.
Yeah, I'm listening to Rascal Flatts, Here Comes Goodbye. Like, if anyone heard that, they would think I'm a psychopath. But
Right.
I think that the emotion is driving and it makes me feel something. And so it like opens up my brain and it just makes me feel like I have to push a house off of me or something.
And same thing when I'm running. When I'm running, I want to forget that I'm running. Like if I'm running for a long distance, I want to go somewhere. I want to have my legs moving and I'm transported to another place. And that's what sad songs do, because they're so emotional. Like you said, they literally put a movie in your head. So it's like I have a movie playing in my head as I'm running, and I'm not thinking about the running.
Totally.
I'm not thinking about the pain in my body.
The worst thing you could do is sit there and be going, my knee, my knee,
Right.
my knee. Oh my God, my knee. Versus, I wonder, because for me, if it can kick me out long enough, then you just start to kind of get into that base level. Like your brain is on, but it's not, you're almost not even conscious of what you're thinking. You're in that flow state, right? And that's how I have to disrupt my normal thinking, because otherwise I'll, again, my knee, my arm, what's for dinner? Did I finish the thing?
Right.
What are my streams today? All the things that are normally there. And the best runs of your life, or all of a sudden you get done, you're like, oh my God, that was an hour?
Yeah.
Yes, I like blacked out, but in the best way.
Exactly.
So,
So with that, the fact that you like sad songs and you resonate with pain
Mm-hmm.
and all of that goes with that. It usually comes from somewhere, right?
Sure.
So if we go back to your early childhood, were there any struggles that you had? Were you a good student in school? Did you do well
Sounds like
in
you were a very
school? Did
empathetic
you?
child if those songs
Yeah, I
made
mean,
you
if that
cry.
young,
Definitely
but
empathetic child.
and we same thing with Ellis when she started writing. Her mom and I were like, where are these emotions coming
Yeah,
from?
yeah.
Like all this pain she's writing about. Like we don't
Heartbreak.
see
I'm
it in
like
her.
11. I'm
So
like,
Totally. Like Taylor Swift, famously, right? She was writing all these breakup songs, and her parents are like, "Have you been in a relationship?" She's like, "No." Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
I definitely, have a beautiful, like I was saying, a lucky childhood. Maybe my trauma isn't like capital T trauma, but everybody has something, and
Yeah.
everybody has their stuff, and it forms us. I think you're right where it's unfair to say it's just environment. There's a huge genetic component of who we are. So I think I heard someone say like your genetics loads the gun and then your environment pulls the trigger or whatever. Like that's a common thing. So yeah, growing up, I was a very empathetic kid. I still have an older brother who was going through a lot more than I was, and does have a lot more like trauma. He's been in at a rehab, and I don't think he would care that I share that. He's a lovely person, and our relationship's gotten a lot better. But I think that was up and down as a kid. We were both overweight, which I think is baked into who I am probably more than I even think about, because your self-image, no matter what you do, we all think of ourselves as like I always, even in therapy, I'll be like, okay, 6th grade me, you need to understand you're safe or whatever. Like I'm almost physically talking to this other version of myself because it's hard to unsee that version of yourself. That's where something like body dysmorphia comes in, or eating disorders and things like that. So I think being a heavy kid is a part of that. I think I used words because I felt like I could have the upper hand at any moment. You can't make fun of me because I'm funnier than you. Try. Oh, you want to roast me? Here's the best 10 jokes you could use. What do you have? Next. Best 10 jokes you could use. Next. So I had an older brother who I think was going through a lot, probably didn't know what to do, took it out on me a little bit in more ways than one. And so I had to learn to kind of defend myself and probably like my heart and my emotions. So that leads to probably just a piece of me that isn't as trusting, or feels like good things will end or people will hurt you potentially, which that comes with a whole bag of tricks, right? That you spend the rest of your life unlearning, knowing how to, when I get really elevated in my chemicals in my brain, to go, whoa, okay, this reminds me of this thing. I understand. Let's bring it back so I can make an educated decision instead of a heightened emotional decision, because I am a heightened emotional person. And so a lot of that comes from therapy and reading about stoicism and diving into the things that I think it's like an immune system. It's not that you're not going to get sick. It's just, can you get sick less and for not as long? So it's not that I'm not triggered by the world and all of my environmental and genetic things, but hopefully I'm trying to put in enough work where when I get there, I have enough tools to bring me back.
Yeah.
And that's, one of the things I hear there is, first of all, you're in therapy, and most people go to therapy for a reason.
Totally.
Right? Meaning their parents may put them there because they're going through a divorce or something. So if you don't mind sharing that, I think it's great that because first of all, one of the things you talk about very early on that you hear is that you have a level of self-awareness that most children don't seem to have.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you were that self-aware when you're overweight to actually let it bother you. A lot of young kids who are in, the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they're not even going to notice it. They don't care, right? They just care that they're getting, eat the food they want or whatever it may be, right? Totally. Or they're not. But so that's one of the curses of the right brain dominant person, is that you're also so self-aware and that you're going to be more judgmental on yourself.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure if you were a kid and if anybody insulted you and said, hey, you're fat or overweight or something, that probably hurt you a lot.
For sure. And even when it comes from somebody like your brother or a friend or something, they think they're messing around. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're like, oh my God, does everyone think this? And I
Yeah.
think it also probably leads to a life of perfectionism, because if you can erase that part of you by being perfect everywhere else, right? This is the fallacy that we all fall into. I'll never be looked at that way again if I'm smart and I make money and I could talk to girls and I'm whatever and I'm funny, and you can look back at your life, and in a way I'm thankful because a lot of those tools have made me who I am, and I feel like I have in some way an advantage because my brain has that self-awareness, but it's a huge curse when it gets out of hand or in unhealth. When I'm really worn down, that's a time when I can all of a sudden be like, oh, you're not shit, what are you
Yeah.
doing? That's when that creeps back up, and
Right.
it's hard.
That self-talk, that negative
Mhm.
self-talk for yourself.
I
That's
can
the
relate to
killer.
that like heavily because like I feel like when I was younger, I always talk about this, but I had like a unibrow and I was this tall when I was 13, and I just started playing guitar and I was like dressing like Avril Lavigne and I had
Sure.
braces and like I got ripped to shreds. Like I'd get bullied so bad, and like it's so weird. Like you work so hard to become this version of yourself that like your kid self always hoped you'd become, and you like grow into yourself and you become this like good looking successful person, and then it's like somebody can say something to you or like even be messing with you a little bit, and like they don't even mean something in a mean way, but it's like I don't know, like I'll like go back to that little girl and I'll be like, "Oh my
Totally.
God, are you making fun of me?" Like whatever. And
Yes.
like they wouldn't expect you to be thinking that way, but like I don't know, there's always that little part of you that's going to be that version of yourself.
And then there's a protector of myself who steps in and sometimes oversteps and will say, cool, you don't need to be friends with that person. It's easier to just cut
Yeah.
them out. It's because that person did protect me and they went above and beyond to form this thing in my brain that was, okay, a big shield will be up so nobody can get you. And I'm thankful for that because it probably did protect me for a while.
Mhm.
But then you're out in the real world and you're like, man, I'm 30 years old. I do have a pretty good self-image, but this protector's still here. So
Mhm.
how do I speak to the protector? And behind that is probably like my 6th grade self who's like
Yeah.
shaking, like nobody get me.
Exactly.
And so how do you speak to that protector in a way that's like, dude, thank you for everything. Like for real, you got me this far. I don't need you. There's a great author I love. He talks about anxiety this way. And he says, anxiety, I love you. But you can't sit in the front and you can't pick the music. You can
Oh,
be along for
wow.
the journey. We need you. Like you kept me alive for hundreds of thousands of years in the wild and my ancestors. You ping that part of my brain that's like, did I do my homework? Did I put on deodorant? Like all those
Yeah.
things, right? Anxiety's
Yes.
good. It keeps us alive. It drives us forward, but it can't sit in the front. It can't pick the music. It can't be, because if it picks the music, it's dun, 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 dun. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're on a 10-hour drive and it's going, did we turn off the stove? Oh my God, does anyone like us?
Mhm.
Oh, I guess you'll probably never get married. You're like, dude,
Get
to the
out of
back.
here. Yeah.
We need you here, but you're in the back row, and
Right.
I'll let you know. And if you see something, speak up. Because again, I need you, but you can't be in the front and you can't pick the
Yeah.
music.
The way you just
Wow.
described that to me was almost a perfect rendition of left brain, right brain conversation, right?
Mm.
Meaning that the right brain is this, subconscious sense of anxiety or feelings or your emotions, your intuition, your things that you can't really put to words, the sense of danger, like
Yeah.
you playing what I thought was the Jaws term.
Yeah, right.
Like boom, or something bad is
Anxious music.
right.
Goes to
Like
the beat of your
something
heart
bad
when
is
you're, like,
about to
racing.
happen any moment. Like in a movie, when you hear that music, okay,
Yes.
something bad's going to happen. And a lot of, right brain dominant people, that music's playing all the time. It's like, I woke up today, something bad is happening. And there's no reason for it. It's there. And then the left brain, obviously, is the verbal and the rational brain, isn't really afraid of a lot of things, but, more, okay, what are we going to do? More motivated, goal oriented. We're going to set a goal. We're going to stick with that goal. And you have to quiet that voice a little bit to be able to do that. So you have to find that balance between that. And that's where we talk about that right brain creative side that you tap into to write the songs that you write and do that, with a certain way. You have to bring that to the forefront. And with that comes that music and that anxiety. And that's, we talked about how sometimes we're to someone in an audience watching you guys play, we're like, wow, you must be having so much fun singing about
Totally.
these songs and your pain and all the things that you went through. And meanwhile, it's like, stabbing yourself on stage and letting it bleed out in front of an
Sure.
audience. And
Yeah.
nobody really realizes that because it looks like you're having a great time or fun or,
Yeah.
because people that can't do what you do are like, wow, that must be so great and fun to have that ability to just
I actually
sit and
wonder
play.
that
Yeah.
about you because if you guys don't follow Spencer on TikTok, then you're dumb. But he is like a master of social media, and I struggle so much with like making TikToks or making like content for my music because like I'll make it and then I'll watch it and then I'll be like, oh my God, what if,
Sure.
whatever. And like, what, I don't know, but I feel like you're very, very good at that. So I was
Thanks.
wondering if you had anxieties about it or if you found a way to work through that.
Yeah, well, and I feel really lucky because I saw social media as this real avenue really early, and so I got a lot of my anxieties out of the way. I think when you think of it maybe similar to something like driving, the first time you get behind a wheel, you're like, who's letting me do this? I'm a child. I should not be doing this. I'm going to kill everyone. But now when you drive, it's automatic.
Mhm.
You don't even, you put your blinker on, you're on the phone, you're whatever. For me, I'm like checking my hat, and all of a sudden you're there. And you're like, what? I don't even think, oh, gas, brake. It's just happening. And I think the more that you do anything, there's some automatic nature to it. And I took the anxiety away, I think, through something similar to like exposure therapy. When I was in college, all my friends were like, dude, you're making a huge mistake. Please don't post cover songs on your social media. Like, what are you doing? That's embarrassing.
Mhm.
And at first I was so embarrassed because you get 0 likes and it's bad, especially when I look back now. I'm like, oh no, that was not good. But I think once you can get through, maybe speaking to somebody who's barely just getting started, who's literally never posted, I think that's the hardest place to be.
Mhm.
If you can get through 0 likes and a couple of your friends jawing at you, all of a sudden you realize, okay, well, world's still happening. I'm fine. Everything's fine. What happens if I post again? Nothing really. And to be able to separate the judgment from others from like what's actually happening and keeping your head down, I think for me was a huge turning point to go, cool, I'm going to do this for 6 months and I'm not going to care what anybody thinks. And after 6 months, if I pick my head up and it's still 0 likes and whatever, doesn't even mean I need to quit. It just means I need to pivot and figure out how to keep going. So that's now 10 years ago. So for me, I'm very lucky that it's such a part of my job. And I think I have the logical side of my brain that is, this is a numbers game. If I post 1,000 videos, I'm just pulling 1,000 lottery tickets. If someone posts 10 videos, they're just pulling 10 lottery tickets. So I'm going to post. And there's something in video game programming. I heard this in a podcast one time where they say, fail fast, find the fun. And so that when they test things out in video games, they ask all the programmers, no bad idea. So like something like Mario Kart, they have like the question boxes that you hit and you get like little power-ups. They're like, bring everything. And we're going to fail fast and find the fun. So out of 1,000 ideas, they kept 3 that are still in the game. But it's a numbers game, and those 3 have changed the world of Mario Kart forever. And for me, when I think of my life on the internet, I mean, statistically, 99% of the time, I eat shit. It is bad. It is not good. I wish I could delete, embarrassing on paper, but nobody really remembers that other than me.
Yeah.
So if you can get past that, fail fast, find the fun. Okay, keep my head down. That to me just comes from time and then just trusting the numbers and trusting the process of, and I think not judging myself, the judgment from others is one thing. And I feel like I'm a lot better at that, but I still get the ping of whatever my head. Oh, that's dumb. That's not perfect. Why would you post if it's not perfect?
Yeah.
So I think that's the voice that I still wrestle with the most. And the more I can quiet that voice and go, I don't have to show up in the world perfectly. I need to show up in the world authentically, because authenticity is a dying breed. And people, if they feel like my diary matches their diary, that's when they want to keep following along.
But that's a really interesting formula,
great
though,
point.
right there, Spencer, because that's really something that I think it's really important what you said, because to get to that authenticity, especially in a right brain person, that authenticity starts off with vulnerability. Like if I'm being authentic and I'm revealing all of my weaknesses and insecurities and all of my fears and opening myself up to criticism, that's the biggest fear, because that's
For
may
sure.
lead to rejection. But what you learned or taught yourself or instinctively just did was to be able to understand that no matter what you do, you're not going to be great at it first. So the only way you can get through that is by failing over and over and over to get to the point where you're good. Any athlete kind of knows that, right?
Yeah,
Like if you
totally.
want to be good at anything, you got to take a million shots because before you're going to have that shot down, you're going to have to throw the baseball, throw the football 100 times before you're going to get really great and throw that perfect spiral.
Mhm.
And that's something I think sports gives you. Maybe music does also when you're learning on your
Yeah.
own and you're learning to play. But that is really interesting because anybody that's out there that really struggles with that first step, how do I get to that authenticity? You have to be willing to understand that you have to fail. That
Yes.
failure is part of it, that embarrassing yourself or making a mistake, because if you're failing alone, that's one thing. But when you're failing in front of an audience like you
Yeah.
did, that's a whole nother thing. Now, again, a social media audience is a little bit better than going on stage. It's kind of like what I wanted to do with her very young was to get her to do the open mics.
Genius.
Because it was like the
Yeah, you
same
did do
thing
that.
at
That
a
would be
young
like
age. It was like exposure therapy. Like I knew she was very self-conscious, but I knew she wanted to do it. But how do you navigate that? Obviously, for me as an old guy, I wasn't like jumping on social media at that point.
Sure.
But it was like, okay, I listened to other stories of other people that did it, and they all started with going to open mics. So it's like,
Really
all right,
wise.
13, let's find an open mic and, let her expose herself that way.
Yes.
But you have to be willing to do that and know that you'll be all right and you'll get through it.
Yeah.
And then you can get to the point where you can really be authentic and reveal yourself, because now you've developed that kind of shell. And so you kind of developed
Yeah.
that formula on your own, which was brilliant, really.
Yeah. I remember snowboarding as a kid and I was really afraid to fall. And then I fell and I audibly laughed because I was like, oh my God, I was so afraid of this. That was it. And all of a sudden you're learning really fast because when you're falling, you're, okay, let's get back up. And then that's where you just get going fast. And I remember Ed Sheeran said something one time that really resonated with me. And he said that songwriting is like a faucet. And for the first couple years, you turn it on, it's rust and mud, and you very rarely even get a patch that looks clear. But you have to get it out to get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And I still think about that all the time because I have an album that I'm working on right now. I'm like, I need this kind of a song. And it's so easy to go like, well, I tried yesterday and I didn't get it. So I'm a failure. It's like, no. That's iteration 1. It might take 12 iterations of this song, but as long as I get it, there's no such thing as failure. Like Hall of Fame baseball players are hitting 3 out of 10 fastballs. Hall of Fame. The best of the best, 3 out of 10. We're not sitting here going, oh my God, they missed 7 out of 10. The best 3-point shooters are a coin flip. So I feel like I just started to see that. I come from a sports background, which I think I'm really lucky to have. And I would practice all the time, and you'd take 3 weeks to learn something. You're like, oh my gosh. But when you finally get it, like, dang,
Yeah.
it feels so good. So I think there's a part of that that's stuck with me, and definitely the discipline, definitely the show up even if you don't want to. I mean, there's so many wrestling practices. I'm like, my tummy hurts. And I'm like, my dad's like, it doesn't matter. You have to go. You committed to a thing. So you're going to show up. And I think songwriting's that way. I think playing shows, God, I've been so sick. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to show up for these people because they showed up for me. And a little bit of that discipline, if you can have it as a tool, I think you can override the right brain enough. And then if you can prove to yourself enough that that you can do that, then you trust yourself.
Right.
And that's where it gets really fun.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
oh, I can fall, like the snowboarding. I fall and I'm fine.
Right.
Oh, now I'm going to go.
Yes.
And that's the key for me, at least.
That you just explained that so well, because I was going to ask if like the emotional side of you wrestles with your discipline, because like when we go through hard times and you're writing an album right now, and like if you went through something really difficult that maybe you're still working through, like to write about it can be so painful sometimes. So I feel like sometimes I don't write like a song about a breakup or something until like a year later because I'm just going through it so hard that I can't bring myself to write about it. But do you struggle with that, or are you good at being like, you know what, let me just like unzip all these emotions and deal with what it feels like afterwards?
I think I have to process it before I can articulate it.
Yeah.
So that's the tough part. I struggle with that too, which is like, it's very rare that I find this even in life. Like, I remember I had a friend that passed away in high school, and I was like, am I like broken? Because I don't know how I feel. Like, I was obviously sad, but it took me a while. And I remember it was like almost a few weeks where it really hit me. And I've kind of always felt that way. And maybe that's the protector stepping in to say, I'm okay. Everyone's okay. We're totally fine here. So I have to wait for that guy to stop directing traffic in my brain. And then usually I'm left with the 6th grade version of me who is heartbroken or who is scared. And I think when I can connect with that guy, that's when the truth comes out. That's the vulnerable side. So I do struggle with that. I have to be really conscious of, thank you, protector. Thank you, anxiety. I know I am tough. I know I am, thank you. You can tell me I'm cool in my brain. I need to get in touch with this other thing that is feeling, not thinking. I know how I logically feel. I will be perfectly fine. Life goes on. But that's not my feelings. Those are my thoughts about feelings.
Yeah.
What am I feeling?
Right.
Okay, now I can write the song. So it does take me a while, usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as you said, another thing that you said really important was that, you know, you get to a point where you can trust yourself. And I think when you're young, and a lot of people that are very right brain dominant, they're constantly doubting themselves. And we talk about that imposter syndrome. And the only way to get over imposter syndrome is to not be an imposter, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the practice and the, you know, the failing and doing it. And I would say if you were a wrestler, that explains a lot, because wrestlers to me are the most disciplined of all athletes. I mean, they are the ones that, to me, any of my friends that were wrestlers, I mean, they were beasts, because not only did they train like crazy, but then you have to diet, which no other athlete has to do.
It's not fun.
And it is so hard as a young kid to do that.
You got to be 16 and have the discipline to go, all my friends are going to Taco Bell for lunch, and I'm going to eat my like turkey sandwich.
Yeah. I mean, or even, you know, sweat it out or not eat at all for a couple of days. I mean, you know, as a young kid, as a teenage boy, you're constantly hungry, and especially if you're an athlete. So, yeah, but those types of things is what gives you the point when you go through that over and over. You get to the point like when you're coming up to a match and you're like, oh, shoot, I got to lose 15 pounds. I know I'll do it. Yeah. Because I always do it.
Because I always do it.
Right.
That's the
trust. But if you didn't have that history, you wouldn't have that trust, right? And that takes time. But at a certain point when you get that trust, like I have people that, like I'll do a lot of different things. I have a book I got to finish, or a lecture, or I'm doing all this, and people go, how do you do all of that? And it's, you compartmentalize them, because you know, all right, when time comes and I have to write that book and my deadline comes, I know it's going to be there. You know, and so then you're able to quiet the anxiety and the doubts and everything.
And I feel so lucky that I have that. And I think how cyclical and snowball effecty it is on the other side. Because if you don't show up for yourself, then you don't trust yourself. The self-talk gets worse, which makes you more anxious, which makes you not do the thing, which makes you not show up. So we've all been there. And that's where it gets tough. Is I think it's easy to sit here on the couch and be like, I always do that. The truth is there are moments for all of us where you're going, all right, I got to break the cycle, and I have to start speaking to myself or do something crazy enough in my life where it's shocking my system so I can go, I think, build up enough. It's like credit for yourself to prove, man, I am the person I want to be. And then once you have that, that's the trust. That's where you can go. Like for me, the internet's very similar. You're talking earlier, like, I know that I can do that. Not that it's going to be great. Not that it's every song's going to go viral, but I trust myself that I will show up. And that's all I can control. And that's a lot of the stoicism stuff that I have kind of gotten into in the last couple of years. Is it's not about the results. It's about knowing what you can control. And then as long as you do that, well, then you controlled what you could do on the journey. The outcomes are still completely out of my control, but I will show up. I will do this. And at least that way you can keep trusting yourself. And most of the time, that just allows you to play longer than anybody else. Because most people are just quitting and failing and getting out because they don't trust themselves anymore. They're going, well, I made the EP and then I stopped putting out music because I'm a piece of shit and nobody likes me.
Right.
And when people, I first moved here and everyone's like, but aren't you afraid of the odds? And I was like, not really, because I think I'm just going to sit here long enough that most people are going to go home. And I'm at year 9 and that's true. And people go home for a myriad of reasons. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of my friends who aren't doing music anymore. And I think it's because they stopped trusting themselves and they stopped believing in themselves because there was no credit left.
Right.
And that's the scary place to be. For myself, the song I put out yesterday, do I wish it streamed more? Yes. But I put out a song. I marketed it so I can keep building credit, so I can keep trusting myself, keeps me in the game. That's, for me, at least 90% of the battle. Just stay in the game. Trust yourself. Get a little bit better, which I think that's the other part is I don't think I'm better at really anything than anybody. I don't think I'm a 1% vocalist or 1% songwriter, but I do think I'm better at getting better. And that, I think, if anything, is my superpower because I just stay in the game.
Yeah.
I showed up as a young football player and I was terrible, but I liked it and I trained with people who were better than me. I was the worst person in the room and I got better at getting better. That's the tool that I think has gotten me as far as I am, and will probably, hopefully keep me in the game for as long as I want.
Well, he always says like, and I do believe this, like, even though I need to work on my like mental discipline a little bit more, because I definitely can fall into like those bouts of like depression where I'm like, oh, I can't do anything, whatever. But in the times that I really am disciplined and I'm putting energy out, like you just said, like you put out your song yesterday, maybe the streams, I didn't see them. I'm sure they're amazing, but if they didn't come back to you in a certain way, like exactly how you wanted, he always says like when you put energy out there and it's really intentional and you're like working hard, it's going to come back to you. Maybe it doesn't come back to you exactly in the streams, but it comes back to you maybe in like, someone's gonna be like, wow, that song was amazing. Can you come play this show here? Or like whatever.
Totally.
You don't know how it's going to, but the fact that you put that effort out and you meant it with all your heart, like it's bound to come back to you in some sort of way that you're looking for.
Yes. And I think we all underestimate the power of what 15 people's being impacted by a song could mean for you.
Yeah.
It takes one person at a record label to hear something and cry in their car and call you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have gotten booked on private gigs where people are like, there's a song called like Silverado, which for me is like a very deep album cut with very few streams. And they're like, me and my wife jammed to that song.
Yeah.
You got to come play this thing. I'm like, you're going to pay me that much money because you heard this album cut 7 years ago? At the time, I'm in my room. I'm a failure. This song is terrible. You're exactly right. I find all the time, like, just keep showing up. You stay in the game long enough. It's shocking how just planting those seeds and not worrying about how tall they grow. It's just planting seeds. And especially if you look at it, I don't even think it's competition, but everyone else in town, to me, I think people are so self-conscious that they're going one seed, wait for it to grow. Oh, shoot. And then they get out. I'm going, I'll plant 1 million seeds. It takes, if you're talking songs or seeds, it takes one to change everything. So who cares what I think? Who cares what Johnny222 on the internet thinks? It matters when one song connects with a large group of people, and then it buys you trust with yourself and trust from others. And then it's go time. Then it's so fun. So it's just plant seeds.
And I think that's an important thing because you guys are in a business where, I mean, we've interviewed some great songwriters and we've spoken to people. And I mean, I don't know this as well as any of you guys do, but I've heard enough of it that there's no one out there that could write a song and say, this is a guaranteed hit. You know what I mean? You may think this is really good.
Yeah.
But no matter who you are, no matter how long you're doing it, it's always a crapshoot with a song, right?
Of course.
For no matter who you are. But I think that may be something about when people lose faith or have a crisis of faith is maybe they feel like they should know it, or they keep on having these songs and going, this is a great song. I think this is a good song. And then they go out there and there's no response and there's crickets and there's crickets and there's crickets. And after a while they start saying, well, maybe my judgment's not so good. But as you said, I don't think there's anybody in this town that could 100%, like, if it's a gamble, right? Like if you put songs out there and say, all right, how many of you are going to pick? It's like picking football on Sunday. You know, this
Yeah.
team's going to win, this team's going to win. You never know. Any
Totally.
team could win, any team could lose. But with you guys, with songs, it really is like a crapshoot. Every time you put a song out there, it could be great, and somebody's going to recognize it. Some people may recognize it, like Silverado, and go, "Oh my God!"
Mhm.
But as a mass market, for whatever reason, it doesn't make it. But it's not a reflection on that you didn't do a good job or you didn't.
Yeah.
And you have to learn that, I guess, huh?
I've put out, this is probably something that a lot of people be like, really? I've put out over 120 songs in my life.
Wow.
That's like, but when people come to my shows, they probably sing three out of 120. Those are not great odds. Statistically, I am not batting very well, but I've sold out the venue in my hometown of 1,800 people. One song was the thing at that moment that changed everything. One song. Nobody came to that show with a sign that said, I know about the other 100.
That's what you think's gonna happen, though.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I don't judge anyone off of anything other than they're really good at bats. I mean, I use this example all the time because I love them. Dan and Shay's single before Tequila was a song called Road Trippin', and it just didn't do well. I thought it was a jam, went to radio, flopped, and everyone went into panic mode. And the next song is a billion stream, arena filling. You're going to say that they're bad at that? You can't. They just had to stay in the game. They just had to keep going. And man, there's been so many times I look at my catalog and I'm like, oh, that song, I can't believe I thought that was cool. But it's not up to me to go, what am I going to think is cool in 10 years? It's up to me to say, what do I think is cool right now?
Yeah.
And in 10 years, I have a little time capsule of my catalog that's, oh, I thought that was cool. I was influenced by that person. This worked. This didn't work. But what I do have is if my brain is an AI of songs, it's getting better and sharper because I'm just doing it more. And that to me is the superpower. It's just planting more seeds. I don't think I'm better than anyone else in this town. I just think I show up more.
Yeah.
I just think I have planted more seeds. And so 3 out of 120 grew, but I still get to show off the 3. Nobody asked me about the other ones. Nobody.
And you trusted your intuition, and even like explaining that you still struggled with all those internal thoughts and you still were like, I'm trusting what I'm putting out there. Even if you get haters on the internet or you get whatever, you're like, well, this is who I am. Like coming back to what you said about authenticity, you're like, well, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody else. So
totally.
If you like it or.
And I had a video last year that I put up, went to bed, woke up, got on the wrong side of the internet, and it was tens of thousands of comments. Kill yourself. This is terrible. You need to quit. You have to be done. The next song I put out is the right one. My fastest streaming song of all time, 250 million views in like 3 months, on the radio as an independent artist, whatever. Back to back.
That makes me want to cry.
My most hate, my most literally kill yourself, every slur you could think of to people messaging me. I know this might never find you, but I just divorced my partner of 20 years. I know it wasn't right for me. And I heard the song on the radio and I stopped at the gas station and I cried and I knew what I had to do. Back to back.
Wow.
The difference is I just know that those people don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they to say anything? That video is now long gone, but the music, the 3 songs that ever sprout, those will change your life and that will impact somebody deeply. That's what, and I'm lucky enough to have had that now a few times in my career. So I know that that's around the corner at any moment. You're one TikTok away. You're one chorus in a writer's room going, this is going to change everything. So that's exciting to me. And that's at least what keeps me showing up. I mean, who knows what the next hit is? Like you said, if anyone knows what a hit is, they would be rolling in the dough because everyone in town, dude, tell me what the hit's going to be.
Right.
There are people with 80 number one, probably Ashley Gorley has songs on his phone that will just never see the light of day.
Right.
He's got 80 of them.
Right.
There are people who are probably one song away, but give up. You ever see that? It's like a meme or like a diagram of somebody digging in a mine and it's the giant thing of diamonds. and they just give up
Oh
right
yeah,
at
they're
that,
like
like one
tap
crack
away.
away.
Right.
And he's like, I guess it just wasn't in here. And
Yeah.
I think about it all the time for people.
But what you
That's
just did, and I think out of anybody that we've had so far, we talk about the antidote to trauma and towards self-esteem issues. The opposite of that is resilience. And that's also a byproduct of your brain, especially your right brain. So where all the trauma and all the difficulty and all the doubts can live in that right brain, resilience also lives there. But there are ways and tools to build it. And actually, it starts a lot with your parents. They help give you the seeds of resilience by giving you, a safe and foundational childhood. But you've done a lot of it yourself, and again, a lot of it came from your sports. A lot of it came from what you learned early on. A lot of it came from the issues that your brother making fun of you, who was probably your hero, and it killed you at the time.
Totally.
And you had to learn. So all of that. So you are really, like, right now, to me, the definition of resilience. And you've given
Yeah.
people
Thank you.
so many good tools today that are really, really amazing. You're really wise beyond your years,
I
which
appreciate that.
is also, your gift.
Well, this was
Thank you.
this is why I started this podcast, because I knew, like, when I moved down here that there were so many talented people here. And then, like, I'd get in a writer's room with them and they'd be like, well, this is how I felt as a kid or whatever. And you, like, admire that person. You're like, oh, you felt all those things too. And it's like, I want people to see people they admire, like you, who's, like, had great success and are such a talented musician. But everyone gets to hear, like, oh, well, that could be me. Like, he struggled with all the same things I struggled with and still figured it out, and, like,
Totally.
I just want people to understand that they can follow their dreams too. And, like, you're just the perfect example. So thank you
I
so much
appreciate
for
that a
being
lot.
so open about it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I have the same thing. I have so many friends who I think are 10x more talented than I am, but they're their own worst enemies. They cannot get past self-judgment, judgment from others. They cannot fathom that a video could get posted, get 10 views, and that doesn't represent everything about who they are.
Yeah.
And that crushes me. And I have people who I'm like, if they could just get in the game and get out of their own way, they could be incredible. And you see it in so many beautifully talented people here, but they are so bleeding heart artistic. They can't even fathom opening the kimono and going, this is who I am and this is what I do, because they think that in unison, the whole world's going to go, we hate you. We hate you.
And that's where I'll go to the neurology thing, that the more talented you are, the more likely you are to develop an imbalance or a deficit in other areas on other sides. And there's some people that when that becomes too much, they cannot do it on their own.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they're going to be able to just, muscle over it. They need to do something that can literally change their brain. And, and that's what I do, right? That's what I do with people, because, it's like a lot of motivational speakers. It's just change your state. You learned early on the tools to be able to do that.
Right.
But a lot of people don't. And the more talented they are, the more vulnerabilities they have, or they seem even greater. And they can't just muscle over it. They can't just do that. And it's not a weakness on their behalf. It's not something, no matter how many times they learn or somebody talks to them or a therapist, their brain literally has to change to become more balanced for them to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so much harder than I think a lot of people realize, because I think there's a lot of people out there still that are like, but just, like, feel different.
Yeah. All
like,
the time.
just,
They're like, don't be
just
depressed.
don't do that.
Or just do it.
Yeah, or exactly.
Yeah.
Just put out the song. And I have friends with severe, mental and chemical imbalances that are, like, hard to explain to people. It's like, I can't, like, somebody with OCD ruminating thoughts, where it's like, no, I literally, it is being, without my medicine, this faucet is on so loud, I can't do it. So, I have people in my family who medicines changed their lives, exercises changed their lives. These tools have changed their lives. And I wish that upon everyone. I feel so lucky that, I mean, that's why I love doing podcasts and I love going deep and things like this, because if I have, I don't know, a couple million people who follow me on the interweb, if even 100 of them were to listen to this and go, man, okay, that's interesting to me. I want to dive into myself. I want to,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Cause I did this when I turned 20. I loaded up my Nissan Pathfinder. I drove from Denver to Nashville, and I didn't like who I was. I ended up getting sober 2 years later. And the way I did that was from listening to podcasts and audiobooks and going, am I alone? Does anyone else feel this way? And I found people who did. And I found people who explained it in a way that made sense to me. And I have great parents who I'd then call and chat about that with. And I have great friends. And it's possible. It's possible for all of us to see our life and maybe not like parts of it, and then look back 5 years later and go, man, I like myself, and I am proud, and I trust myself. And that I hope, if anything, that, you know, again, and we don't know, 10 years later, someone's going to come up to us and go, I heard you on the Right Brain podcast, and you were talking. That's so freaking cool to me.
Yeah. Well, and also, you know, there are these people out there with this tremendous talent, these genius level skills that may never fully be able to realize them because of that other side, because of that imbalance. And we may allow that person to flood the world with music that we've never heard, that might make us all cry someday.
Yeah.
That's what you
make
said.
us, and that's, you know, motivation for me is like when I work with some children, I'm like, you know, this child could change the world someday because they are so brilliant, but they'll never get there without help. And it's not their fault.
It's not their fault.
So
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Spencer. This was absolutely the best. Like,
can we
what
let
a
people
gift.
know where to get in touch of you or find out more about you, find your music?
At Spencer Crandall on all the things, at Spency Boo on Twitter. I made it when I was 14. Yep. My friends were like, you should make a Twitter. I was like, okay, at Spency Boo. I'll probably never do anything with Twitter. I was wrong. And then at, you know, Spencer Crandall on Spotify and Apple and all things. Like I said, I got 120 songs. So dive in, and just put out a song called Honeymoon Phase. We'll be going on a fall tour this fall. So come on out to that. Tickets will be available soon. And yeah, just follow me. Shoot me a message if you saw this, and let's chat.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate you.
Great young man.
Thank you very much.